Hi, I'm Rob from Projector Central, and this is our review of the JVC DLA-NZ7. So if you haven't heard the news, JVC recently announced 3 new laser projectors to replace their native 4K lamp projectors. The least expensive is the DLA-NZ7, also sold as the DLA RS2100 in JVC's professional series. It costs $10,000. Now that sounds like a lot of money until you realize that it uses LCOS imaging technology. And that $10,000 ticket, it's actually half the price of the cheapest laser projector from Sony, JVC's LCOS rival. Now some of you may be asking, what exactly is LCOS? It stands for Liquid Crystal on Silicon. You can read more about it in our full review at Projector Central. But let's just say here that LCOS has some benefits that have made JVC's and Sony's the top choice of many home theater enthusiasts. One of these is high fill factor, which means that the pixels are very tightly packed. That makes them less visible at close range. It also makes it easier to get true native 4K resolution from a small chip with no need for pixel shifting. The other key benefit of LCOS is deep native black levels. That gives these projectors superb contrast. So what's the downside? Well, LCOS chips are expensive to make, which is why the projectors cost so much. So let's go ahead now and have a look at the DLA-NZ7. JVC's new NZ laser projectors share a few similarities with the earlier NX lamp models. To start, the projectors look alike with essentially the same dimensions and styling. They also use the same native 4K D-ILA imaging chips, and they use the same excellent lenses. For the NZ7 and the step-up DLA-NZ8, that's a 65mm all-glass lens with 17 elements in 15 groups. It's got a generous 2x optical zoom with powered zoom shift and focus. These new projectors also carry over 2 important features developed for the NX projectors. Frame Adapt Dynamic HDR tone mapping automatically adjusts the image to account for the wide range of HDR programs out there. Another feature, Theater Optimizer, fine-tunes this further to account for things like your specific screen size and material, and even the lens zoom setting, which always has an effect on how much light passes through. But there are some big advances in these new models, starting with the updated version of JVC's Bluescent laser module that was previously only used in the top prosumer projector. It uses a blue laser and phosphor wheel to create the needed red, green, and blue primaries. Now this 3rd generation module puts out much more light in a smaller space, and it runs cooler than prior versions. The NZ7 puts out up to 2200 ANSI lumens of brightness, while the advanced optical block in the NZ8 and NZ9 pushes output up to 2500 and 3000 lumens. So these projectors provide more impact with HDR than the prior lamp models and also stand up better to moderate ambient light. Now, like all laser projectors, they require no lamp replacements over the 20,000 hour life of the projector. That's more than 13 years of daily use if you watch for 4 hours a day. And they enjoy fast startup and instant shutdown compared to lamps. I timed about 40 seconds from power up to get a live picture on the screen. Another important new feature is the updated Hdmi connections. These JVCs are among the very first projectors we've seen to offer Hdmi version 2.1 ports with full 48 gigabits per second bandwidth. This gives them the ability to play 8K video at up to 60 Hz frame rate, which helps future-proof them for tomorrow's video programs. But JVC also combines this with its 8K E-Shift pixel shifting to enhance the image. The version in the NZ7 operates at 120 Hz, which gives you twice as many pixels on the screen. In the NZ8 and flagship NZ9 models, there's a new 240 Hz E-Shift X version. It allows those projectors to put up to 4 times the number of pixels delivered by the native 4K imagers. That gives you true pixel-for-pixel rendering of 8K content with no loss of signal information. Of course, what's more important for gamers is that the new HDMI ports allow these projectors to play 4K games at a 120 Hz frame rate from the latest Sony and Xbox consoles. When you engage the low latency mode, the NZ7 achieves a respectable 36 milliseconds of input lag with 4K 60 Hz signals. We weren't able to test 4K 120 with our lag meter, but it should come in even lower. Now, before we go any further, I want to thank Elite Screens for sponsoring this video and supplying the screens for our studio. I've always loved the value Elite delivers in its affordable screens, and the 110-inch we're using today is no exception. The Cinewhite UHDB is a matte white material, perfect for a dark theater with a high contrast projector like this JVC. It's certified by the Imaging Science Foundation for accurate color points, dynamic range, and color temperature. And its 1.3 gain provides a little extra punch for HDR or viewing in moderate light. Our version features Elite's edge-free AON frame with a super thin bezel. You can learn more about all of Elite's screens, including their ambient light rejecting ALR materials, at the company's website. So the DLA-NZ7 we reviewed was a very early production sample sent a couple of months before the line was scheduled for release. The final tuning on these projectors was still a work in progress. This was evident in whites that didn't quite match the neutral D65 gray specified for film and video production. They leaned a little bit toward blue-green. Fortunately, this was easily corrected with calibration, and afterward both the SDR and HDR images from the NZ7 were accurate and really spectacular. 1080p SDR movies in the JVC's natural mode exhibited the fabulous black levels and contrast we've seen in JVC's previous projectors. That gives images great pop and dimensionality. Whites were crisp and colors were saturated and displayed accurate-looking skin tones and foliage. There was no obvious laser speckle, and since these are 3-chip projectors, they're immune to the rainbow artifacts you can get with some single-chip DLP projectors. Thanks to the excellent lens and good scaling, 1080p images looked enticingly sharp, though I found that the 120Hz E-shift pixel shifting used in the NZ7 tends to subtly smooth rather than sharpen some images. I typically passed on using it for both SDR and HDR. Not surprisingly, given the LCOS imagers, challenging dark content also looked great. The JVC showed off some of my toughest torture test scenes with excellent rendering of shadow detail and none of the obvious haze you get with projectors that can't achieve a deep native black. Now, it's worth noting that JVC got rid of the dynamic iris it used to deepen blacks with its lamp projectors. It's been replaced in the new models with a dynamic control feature that instead modulates the laser on dark scenes. They were still working on fine-tuning during my audition, but the last version I saw was effective in its least aggressive setting for deepening blacks on dark scenes with only modest attenuation of the highlights. You can read more about this new feature in our full review at Projector Central. HDR was also a visual treat on the NZ7, and the projector's frame-adapt dynamic tone mapping worked as well as I remembered it from the NX series. As I mentioned, the beauty of this feature is that it's set and forget, and automatically accounts for the wide differences in mastering from one HDR title to the next. It does an excellent job of punching up the highlights while retaining the projector's deep blacks. HDR colors look punchy and well saturated. The NZ7 makes no claim to achieving the full DCI P3 color gamut used in HDR content, but using Kalman's software, I measured 82.6% of DCI P3 in the frame adapt mode, which delivers much of the benefit of wide color gamut. And with the native 4K imagers and the projector's excellent lens, unscaled 4K material looks sensationally sharp. I also watched a few 3D clips using JVC's PK-EM2 emitter, which is required for 3D along with a pair of RF shutter glasses. I dedicated one of the user picture modes for 3D, and the projector carried over the D65 white balance and Rec 709 color calibration that I had performed for regular SDR. 3D images were sufficiently bright and essentially color accurate with just a slight green bias introduced by the glasses. Flesh tones and other familiar colors looked natural, and 3D animation looked great. And that about wraps up our review. Now, I admit to being a little nervous when I first powered up JVC's DLA-NZ7. JVC has a well-deserved reputation for excellence with its lamp projectors, and I wondered if they could successfully transition the line to laser. Fortunately, I had nothing to worry about. While I wouldn't be surprised to see a firmware update or two as these new projectors settle in, if the NZ7 is any indication, the new platform is basically high-performing and up to the standard we've come to expect from JVC. And taken by itself, the NZ7 represents a fantastic value among high-end laser projectors, one that significantly beats its closest competition on price while introducing new forward-looking features. It was an easy pick for our Top Editor's Choice Award. You can read more about the NZ7 in our full review linked below. Thanks for watching, and as always, hit the thumbs up button if you like what you saw, and feel free to subscribe and activate alerts for our upcoming videos. We'll see you next time.